Alicia,
Jared,
welcome everyone to Vibrations and Manifestations.
good to be here.
So, today we're taking a look at something that, well, it might seem a little outside our usual, orbit, law of attraction, nature of reality.
Definitely.
But stick with us because I think you'll actually find some really fascinating connections. Even with something that sounds as, I don't know, left field as microdata collection in a super creepy office building.
Uh-huh.
You know how sometimes they joke this whole thing we do feels like some big cosmic experiment we signed up for.
Right.
Well, lately, especially after watching a certain TV show, I haven't been joking quite as much.
Yeah.
Unlike the folks we're going to talk about, we do choose to be here each week.
Mostly choose.
Mostly, yeah. Depending on caffeine levels and, chakra alignment, maybe.
It's true. This deep dive is, it's kind of a genre mashup, isn't it? Like imagine Abraham Hicks bumping into someone from a corporate sci-fi thriller by the water cooler.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. We are plunging headfirst into the world of the Apple TV Plus series, Severance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're asking some pretty big questions, I think, like what actually happens to us, to our sense of self, when we try to literally split ourselves in two?
And, what are the consequences when we try to block out pain, but maybe end up blocking out joy and intuition too, that inner knowing we talk about?
Yeah, that connection. Severance gives us this really vivid, okay, fictional, but still powerful way to look at these ideas.
The whole premise just forces you to think about like what a fragmented life really means.
It really does.
Yeah.
So the show's about this company, Lumen Industries.
Mm.
And employees there can get this procedure called severance.
Right.
It creates a totally separate work self. They call it the innie, who knows nothing about their life outside work. And the outside self, the outie, remembers nothing about work.
Zero memory crossover.
None. It's sold as like the ultimate work-life balance, which, okay, on paper, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but the show just peels back all these layers and gets really unsettling.
It really does.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many of us, maybe in smaller ways, are already living kind of severed? Just going through the motions somewhere. Well, the part that feels truly alive, well, maybe that part's sort of locked away.
That feeling definitely resonates, that sense of maybe only living partially. Psychology talks about that too, right? How
Yeah.
we cope with stress or trauma by like compartmentalizing.
Oh, totally. And it clicks right into what Abraham teaches.
Yeah.
We've all got this core of well-being, this inner being. It knows who we are, what we want.
The source within.
Exactly. But when we resist that flow, when our thoughts and feelings create friction, that's when we feel that disconnect. And it feels eerily like how those innies seem kind of lost and disoriented.
Like something vital is missing, even if you can't name it.
Yeah, that absence. It speaks to that core human need for integration, for feeling whole, right?
Hmm.
When we push parts of ourselves down, it's like building internal walls. Stops that natural wholeness.
Definitely creates barriers.
So that's our plan today. We're using severance as this interesting lens to explore integration, how our emotions guide us, and just that profound act of remembering who we truly are on all levels.
Mm-hmm.
Think of this as your express elevator, maybe straight to alignment.
I like that. The alignment elevator.
But okay, before we really jump in, maybe let's give a quick rundown of Severance for anyone
Yeah.
listening who hasn't ventured down those long white hallways yet.
Good idea. So Severance, it's created by Dan Erickson, streams on Apple TV Plus. Genre-wise, it's a real mix sci-fi, definitely psychological thriller, and maybe even some dystopian workplace drama vibes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Premiered back in February 2022. And the core idea, like we said, is the severance procedure at Lumen Industries.
Right, which splits you into the innie work life only, no outside memories, and the outie personal life only, no work memories.
It's pitched as this amazing solution for work-life balance, but the show just brilliantly unpacks all the emotional, the ethical problems that come with that.
So many problems.
Absolutely. And the characters really pull you in. You got Mark Scout, played by Adam Scott. He's grieving his wife. He's a team leader in this weird department called macrodata refinement.
NDR, yeah.
Right? And he starts feeling this unease, this dissonance, both as his innie and his outie self. Things start to bleed through, sort of.
Then there's Heliar. Britt Lower plays her. She's the new recruit on the severed floor, and she just instantly, like violently, rejects the whole idea.
Her resistance is huge. It really drives a lot of the conflict and makes everyone question the system.
Totally.
Then you have Urban Bailiff, that's John Turturro. He's been there ages, super disciplined, follows all the Lumen rules to the letter. But then you start seeing these little cracks, this kind of poetic, almost romantic side emerging.
Which is fascinating. And Dylan George, played by Zach Cherry, he brings a lot of the, sarcastic humor.
Yeah.
But underneath, you find out he has this really deep emotional core, especially about his connections with the other innies.
And we have to mention Seth Milchick, Trammell Tillman, the floor manager. He's got this relentless cheerfulness that is just deeply unnerving and so controlling.
He's terrifyingly cheerful, embodies that whole creepy Lumen vibe perfectly.
And finally, Harmony Cobell, played by the amazing Patricia Arquette. She's the boss, basically. Enigmatic, seems like a true believer in Lumen's mission, whatever that is.
Right.
She manages the severed floor with this weird mix of, almost motherly concern one minute and then total authoritarian control the next.
Yeah, it's a strange mix. And the themes the show tackles are just huge, aren't they? What even is identity if you can split it? This illusion that we can actually separate parts of ourselves.
And big questions about consent, control, especially around work. How much of ourselves do we owe our job?
Exactly. And it really digs into how trauma gets handled, or maybe mishandled, commodified even, with Mark's story. And just the way emotions are policed in that office.
It's all about that fundamental human need, isn't it? For meaning, for connection, for feeling like your life is one continuous thing, not just broken pieces.
The storytelling is amazing too. It's such a deliberate pace, a real psychological mystery.
Slow burn.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the look of it, those stark white halls, the kind of brutalist design. Even the old school analog tech they use in this futuristic setting, it all creates this really unsettling, isolating feeling.
Yeah, and those weird corporate rituals they have. And those moments where the innies suddenly feel something, an emotion, but have no idea why. So powerful.
Right. No context for the feeling.
It's packed with metaphor, symbolism, and you can definitely see, like you said, those connections to spiritual ideas, even Abraham Hicks stuff bubbling under the surface.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that central question is just so gripping. Who are you when you literally aren't allowed to remember yourself? It just mirrors that feeling of being disconnected from your inner being so directly. And the show paints such a vivid picture of what happens when you try to shut down your emotions for some goal, whether it's professional success or just trying to avoid pain.
It really underscores the need for self-awareness, for listening to that inner nudge when something feels off, right? And embracing your emotional truth as the way back to, alignment.
Exactly. It's a powerful argument in its own sci-fi way that Wholeness doesn't come from cutting pieces off. It comes from integrating everything, even the hard stuff.
Couldn't agree more. It's about bringing all the parts together.
Yeah.
So our intention today is to explore what Severance might accidentally teach us about integration, about our emotional guidance system, and ultimately about remembering who we really are on every level.
Getting back to wholeness.
Exactly. So let's go in. And by in, I mean, let's ride that elevator all the way to alignment.
Cue the fluorescent lighting.
And the cosmic clarity. Let's begin.
Okay, so this split,
Yeah.
the innie and the odi, it's a really stark visual for something Abraham Hicks talks about constantly, right?
Yeah, the split between our physical self, the one experiencing the day-to-day, and our inner being, that broader, wiser perspective.
It's that core framework. Physical self versus inner being. Alignment versus resistance.
And alignment feels good. Clarity, joy, flow. Resistance feels, like being an innie sometimes.
Right. Because the innie has zero access to joy outside the weird, sterile confines of Lumen. No memories of love or purpose or anything beyond the bizarre tasks. It mirrors that feeling of disconnection from source, from our own deeper wellspring of well-being.
There's that line, I think Mark's innie says something like it. The innie doesn't know why it's suffering. It just knows it doesn't feel free. Whew.
That hits hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because how often do we feel that? A general malaise, a lack of freedom, but we can't quite pinpoint why. We're just stuck.
We're living these severed lives in subtle ways. We compartmentalize, we push things down, we build walls to cope.
And often it starts because we're listening more to the outside world, expectations, demands, than to that inner voice, that inner knowing. We forget we're worthy of freedom and joy.
And it's not just like a philosophical idea. There's actually science that sort of backs this up, this feeling of being split.
Right. We can look at things like compartmentalization from a psychological perspective.
Explain that a bit. What is it exactly?
Well, it's essentially a defense mechanism. Our brain tries to isolate conflicting thoughts, emotions, or experiences, especially when we're in demanding or stressful environments, like a high-pressure job.
So it helps us function in the moment.
Yeah, it can be adaptive short term, like you wall off the stress of work so you can relax at home, or vice versa. But if you rely on it too heavily for too long,
It
it
backfires.
can lead to feeling emotionally numb or disconnected. You might experience cumulative stress because you're not really processing things. And cognitive dissonance, that feeling when your beliefs and actions don't line up. Your work self might feel totally alien to your home self.
Like Mark Scout, his innie has no clue about his grief, his life outside. He's walled off from meaning, from memory, even from pain, but also from joy.
Exactly. We build the walls to keep out the bad stuff, but they inadvertently keep out the good stuff too. We lose access.
Okay, what about structural dissociation? That sounds a bit more intense.
It is, yeah. It's often discussed in the context of trauma, where the personality fragments into different self states. There might be an apparently normal part that handles daily life and emotional parts that hold the trauma. These parts can alternate, leading to shifts in behavior, memory gaps.
Wow, okay.
But interestingly, researchers are seeing patterns that look similar, though maybe less extreme, in people in extremely high-pressure careers, even without major trauma. It involves fragmented self-states, kind of alternating between avoidance and engagement. And neuroimaging, brain scans, actually show altered connectivity in certain brain networks,
Which networks are we talking about?
primarily the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN, right. That's the brain's sort of me network. Active when we're mind wandering, thinking about ourselves, the past, the future.
Exactly. It's crucial for our sense of self, our autobiographical memory, understanding others. And what we see is that chronic stress, trauma, even prolonged emotional suppression can disrupt how the different parts of the DMN talk to each other.
Disrupted how?
Well, sometimes the anterior parts involved in self-reflection can become hyperconnected, like in anxiety or depression, amplifying negative self-talk.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Or in other cases, particularly with trauma, the integration between different DMN hubs might decrease. This can mess with pulling up memories, maintaining a coherent sense of self over time, that feeling of continuity.
So that foggy feeling, like you're watching your life from the outside or you can't quite connect the dots,
Yeah.
that could literally be the DMN's wiring getting like staticky under the emotional load.
That's a really good way to put it. The brain's self-processing system gets short-circuited. It's not just a metaphor for feeling split. There's a neurobiological basis for that experience of fragmentation.
And this connects back to Severance. Mark literally loses access to his whole self, his memories, his feelings when he's innie.
Precisely. It's an extreme dramatization of what can happen internally when parts of our experience are walled off.
Okay, one more model, ego states, like parent, adult, child from transactional analysis. How does that fit?
That's another interesting lens. Think about work environments. They often demand a strong adult ego state, rational, functional, objective, sometimes maybe a parent state, critical or nurturing.
And the child state, playful, spontaneous, emotional, gets sidelined.
Often, yeah. Or it might come out in unhelpful ways, like rebellion or procrastination if it feels too stifled. If we get stuck rigidly in one state, especially the functional, maybe slightly numb adult required by some jobs, we risk fragmentation. The parent might lead to burnout through overcompliance. The adult neglects emotional needs. The child gets ignored.
So the innie could almost be seen as a hyper-developed but ultimately limited adult or maybe even child state forced into compliance, while the outie holds the other parts, like the grieving parent.
That's one way to look at it, yeah. The workplace often implicitly encourages us to sever ties with our inner child, with our vulnerability and spontaneity, to just be the functional cog.
Wow. Okay, so the science really paints a picture of how this internal splitting can happen, even neurologically.
It does. But the good news is, science also supports ways to reconnect. Practices like mindfulness and emotional integration have been shown to help strengthen the coherence of the DMN, making it less reactive and more integrated.
Which sounds a lot like what Abraham Hicks teaches, right? Tuning into our feelings, seeking alignment.
Exactly. It's where the spiritual wisdom and the neuroscience seem to meet. Tuning into joy, practicing appreciation, meditating. These aren't just woo-woo concepts. They can literally help reconnect our brain's wiring, strengthening that sense of wholeness.
So let's circle back fully to Abraham. Our inner being is always there, calling us toward alignment, toward joy, clarity, purpose.
Always. Never gives up on us, never sees us as broken.
So that any like feeling the confusion, the sense of being lost or constrained from an Abraham perspective, That's simply resistance.
It's resistance. It's the gap between where we are vibrationally maybe focused on lack or problems or what others think and where our inner being knows we could be, which is in joy and clarity. We're listening to static instead of the clear signal from within.
We forget our own power, our own worthiness. The innies are literally programmed to forget they have any existence or value outside Lamon.
And we can do that to ourselves, can't we? We buy into limiting beliefs. We tell ourselves we're not good enough. We focus on the struggle. We forget the truth of who we are.
Imagine, though, if the Severance characters could somehow, even dimly, feel that pull from their inner being, even without memories, just that feeling of better versus worse.
The whole narrative would shift. Because freedom isn't really about escaping the building, is it? Not ultimately.
No, Abraham always says.
Freedom is not in the outer circumstance. It's in the inner knowing. Even in a locked basement office, if you could connect to that inner alignment, your experience would be different.
Which brings us to the emotional guidance system. In Severance, the innie's only real guide is their feelings. Helly's rebellion, Mark's unease, Dylan's outburst. It's their emotions screaming that something is fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. Their feelings are the undeniable truth, signaling the profound disconnection and lack of purpose.
And that's precisely how Abraham describes our emotions, not as something to be fixed or suppressed, but as indicators.
Like an internal GPS. Feeling bad anger, frustration, sadness, boredom means you're pointed away from your desired destination, away from alignment with your inner being. It's a signal to pivot your thoughts, to reach for a better feeling thought.
Those bad feelings are breadcrumbs back to alignment.
Yes. That melancholy you feel at your desk, that Sunday night dread. It isn't just burnout, though it might feel like it. From this perspective, it's misalignment in disguise. It's your inner self saying, hey, this isn't resonating. There's more joy available.
So the path isn't severance, cutting off the feeling.
No, it's integration. It's listening to the signal. True manifestation, true well-being, comes from acknowledging all of yourself and gently guiding yourself back into alignment. It's not about pretending problems don't exist or faking happiness.
So it's about acknowledging where you are and reaching for the feeling of relief, the next better feeling.
Severance shows the tragic endpoint of dissociation for survival. Abraham's teachings guide us toward reintegration for thriving, bringing the innie and outie aspects of ourselves back into conversation, back into wholeness.
Because, as you said, our inner being never sees us as split or broken. It only ever sees our wholeness, waiting for us to remember it.
It holds the vision of our complete, joyful, powerful selves.
So when we see Mark's innie literally unable to access his whole self, or when we feel that deep disconnect during burnout, there's often a real, tangible brain process underlying it.
It's not just in your head in the dismissive sense. It's actually in your brain.
Precisely. Which makes Severance feel even more potent, right? It's visualizing an internal state.
Yeah, definitely more unsettling.
And if we connect this back, think about how that weakened self-awareness Wi-Fi. Well, doesn't that sound a lot like being disconnected from your inner being in Abraham's terms?
Yeah, it really does. When that connection is strong, you feel guided, clear. When it's weak or disrupted.
You feel lost, confused, maybe anxious, like the innies cut off from their purpose, their history, their joy.
Okay, so Severance paints this really bleak picture of the split self. Where do we find the way back? This feels like where Abraham Hicks's teachings on alignment become really key.
Totally, because Abraham's core message is that your inner being, your true self, is always there, constantly offering guidance towards joy, clarity, expansion, purpose, towards alignment.
So those feelings of being lost, disoriented, like the innies.
Abraham would say that's a sign you've drifted out of alignment. Maybe you're focusing too much on problems or what others think or trying to control things you can't control instead of tuning into your own inner compass, your desires.
Forgetting our own inherent worthiness, maybe.
Exactly. Forgetting that you are fundamentally worthy, that well-being is your natural state.
It's interesting, though, because even in Severance, even without memories, you see flickers of the innie's core selves trying to emerge. Curiosity, the desire for connection, for answers.
Right. Which makes you wonder, even in that extreme severed state, what if they could somehow tap into that inner being, that fundamental sense of self that exists beyond memory? Interestingly, this connects back to the science, too.
How so?
Research on things like mindfulness, meditation, even focusing deliberately on positive emotions. It shows these practices can actually strengthen the coherence and connectivity within that default mode network.
So You can actually improve your self-awareness Wi-Fi signal.
It seems like it. You're essentially reconnecting on the wires, making that internal sense of self stronger and more stable. It's like consciously tuning into that signal Abraham talks about, the signal from your inner being.
Tuning into a stronger signal. I love that. And in Severance, without memories or external context, the innie's emotions become their primary guide.
Absolutely. Their anxiety, their sadness, their frustration, even their moments of camaraderie or defiance, those feelings are raw data telling them something is fundamentally
They're
off.
signals of that disconnection.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Which is precisely how Abraham describes our emotional guidance system.
Right. Negative emotions aren't bad. They're just indicators.
Indicators that your current thoughts or focus are out of sync with your inner being, with who you really are and what you truly want. That feeling of just dread or melancholy sitting at your desk, Abraham wouldn't just call it burnout.
It's misalignment.
It's your guidance system saying, hey, this thought, this focus, this situation, it doesn't feel good because it's not in alignment with your broader perspective, your well being.
It really shifts the perspective on those bad feelings. They're trying to help you get back on track.
Mm-hmm. They're the path back to alignment if you listen.
It makes you wonder, could someone like Mark's Innie, even with zero outside context, use a tool like, say, Abraham's focus wheel?
That's a fascinating thought experiment.
Like, could he identify the feeling, I feel trapped and uneasy, and then intentionally try to find thoughts that feel just a tiny bit better, even within the confines of Lawan?
Hmm.
This water from the cooler tastes okay. Heliar made a funny face.
It's possible. It's about pivoting even slightly towards relief, finding any small thing that resonates with that inner being's perspective, which is always looking for the positive aspects, using the principles even in the most limited reality.
Which really brings us to the core point, doesn't it? Integration, not severance.
Exactly. True well-being, true manifestation, feeling vibrantly alive. It comes from embracing and integrating all the parts of yourself, not slicing them off or suppressing them.
Severance shows the ultimate nightmare of dissociation.
And Abraham's work shows the path to thriving through realignment, through remembering your wholeness.
And it's really comforting, I think, that key Abraham teaching. Your inner being never sees you as broken or split or severed.
Never. From that broader perspective, you are always whole, always complete, always loved, even when your physical mind feels totally fragmented.
So maybe the goal isn't to eliminate the work you or the home you, but to see them as different expressions of the same whole person.
And to realize that both aspects ultimately desire the same fundamental things: freedom, joy, clarity, connection, well-being.
Embracing all those facets.
And, scientifically, therapeutic approaches are catching up to this idea of integration. Things like emotional mind integration or EMI and therapies focused on ego states. They're designed to help reconcile these fragmented self-narratives.
And they actually help the brain.
Yeah, the evidence suggests they can help improve that DMN coherence we talked about, strength and resilience, help people process difficult experiences and feel more whole, more integrated. Mindfulness programs also show significant improvements. It all points towards bringing the pieces back together.
You know, personally, watching Severance, it really hit home for me on a few levels. That whole idea of identity fragmentation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how we all kind of do that sometimes. Like, this is my work self, this is my home self, trying to keep things separate to cope.
We all compartmentalize to some degree.
Right. But seeing the extreme version in the show where they literally only know half their life, it definitely made me pause and think, okay, how present am I really? Am I sometimes just phoning it in certain areas?
That's a really valuable reflection, isn't it? It makes you consider how much we might be holding back, maybe unconsciously, just from our own full experience.
And the whole capitalism and consent thing in the workplace context,
Yeah.
wow, it's chilling. Makes you think about those unspoken rules, you know. How much of us do we feel obligated to give to our jobs? Where are those boundaries, really?
It definitely raises uncomfortable questions about modern work culture.
For me, Mark's story, his grief, using severance, clearly trying to just switch off that pain that was really moving. It just hammered home that trying to disconnect from hard feelings doesn't make them go away.
No, it really doesn't. Avoidance isn't resolution, is it? The pain just festers somewhere else, maybe comes out sideways. It underlines that point perfectly.
I also just love the way they told the story, that slow burn, like you said, and the visuals, the lighting, the architecture of Lumen. It all builds this incredible sense of unease, this psychological weight.
The atmosphere is a character in itself, almost.
Totally. And even though the situation is so out there, the emotions the characters grapple with felt so real. And it's packed with symbolism, just layers you keep thinking about after.
That deliberate pacing and the almost sterile environment really mirror that feeling of being trapped, right? Having only that limited view the innies have, it makes the raw human emotions trying to break through even more powerful.
Yeah. Reflecting on it, I definitely feel like I got some insights. It made me way more aware of my own tendencies to maybe push down certain feelings
Mm.
or try to keep parts of my life totally walled off, which,
Yeah.
it's kind of an illusion anyway.
The illusion of control.
Exactly. Just highlights that deep, deep human longing we all have for integration, for wholeness. And that question the show keeps implicitly asking, if you could turn off your pain, would you still be you? That really stuck with me.
It's such a core question about humanity. Our feelings, even the tough ones, they're part of who we are. They shape our empathy, our joy. It aligns so well with teachings that say, lean into your emotional guidance system, don't switch it off.
Right. And it made me think about how often we operate from that place of trying to manage or control our experience instead of just allowing the flow, allowing life, allowing emotions. Severance, in its own intense way, is like this big warning sign about trying to control our inner world too much.
It's a great prompt to think about that balance, isn't it? Between wanting order and accepting the beautiful messiness of being human. So the invitation here for everyone listening is really to embrace all those parts. The worker, the dreamer, the child, the part that feels scared, the part that feels brave.
All of it. They all want the same thing, fundamentally. Freedom, joy, clarity, connection. They belong together.
And to help us all feel that sense of coming together, we wanted to offer a little guided experience. Sort of a cinematic visualization leading to remembrance.
We're calling it the elevator back to wholeness, a chance to gently guide yourself back to that feeling of interconnection.
So if you're somewhere you can safely do so, maybe just gently close your eyes. No pressure if you can't, just listen along.
Yeah, just settle in, take a nice, slow, deep breath in, fill in your belly.
Yeah.
And just let it go with a sigh.
Yeah. Let's do one more like that. Deep breath in, hold it for just a second, and release. Let your shoulders drop.
Now just imagine, in your mind's eye, you're standing before an elevator. But this isn't some cold, sterile corporate elevator.
No, this one feels warm, inviting. Maybe the doors are made of soft wood, or perhaps there's a gentle, warm light glowing from within. You just know, intuitively, this elevator goes to all the important places within you.
The doors slide open smoothly, welcomingly. Go ahead, step inside. Feel the sense of safety and potential here. As the elevator begins to rise smoothly and gently, just notice a quiet, loving whisper starting deep within your own heart.
And let that whisper become words you say silently to yourself, with increasing energy like a gentle wave building. I remember who I am.
I remember what joy feels like.
I remember laughter, sunlight on my skin, dreams I'd forgotten.
I remember ease. I remember freedom.
I remember the me who didn't apologize for being bright, for shining.
I remember how good it feels to be whole.
I remember that I don't need permission from anyone to feel better.
I remember that my feelings are sacred. They are true guides.
I remember that alignment is my power.
I remember that I get to feel good. It's my natural state.
I remember that I am enough right now, just as I am, without proving anything.
I remember my worth. It's inherent.
I remember my wholeness. It was never truly lost. Feel that resonance, that remembrance settling within you.
And now, the elevator gently comes to a stop. The doors slide open softly, and you're back, fully back in your body, right here, right now.
Just feel your feet on the ground. Notice the physical sensations. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes gently.
Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest, your abdomen, as you breathe. Easy, natural breaths.
If it feels right, you might place a hand over your heart. Just feel the warmth there, the steady rhythm, the space. This is your home base. This is your truth.
And recognize that all those different parts of you we talked about, the inner child, the wise leader, the creative dreamer, the focused worker, the quiet witness within, they aren't severed. They're not split off.
No, imagine them all sitting together right here inside you, held in the space of awareness, integrated, aligned, safe.
Take one final deep, nourishing breath in, feeling the truth. You are safe.
And as you exhale completely, letting go of any tension, feel this truth. You are free.
You were never actually broken. You were never truly severed.
You are only waiting to remember. And maybe, just maybe, let this be the day you do. Not just as an idea you heard, but as a feeling, a being.
You are whole. You are loved. Well, this has been, wow, a really thought-provoking dive into severance and all these surprising connections to our inner landscape.
Ah,
Definitely gave me a lot to chew on for my own journey towards, more integration.
me too. And hopefully for everyone listening, the parallels between Lumen's world and our own lives, they really do offer valuable stuff about self-awareness, about embracing all of who we are.
So thinking about that elevator to alignment idea, maybe we can leave people with the thought of their own internal elevator, the one that connects all the parts of themselves.
Yeah, I like that. Imagine stepping into it.
And maybe having a little rampage of remembrance on the ride up, remembering joy, laughter, dreams, ease, freedom, that feeling of wholeness, remembering it's your birthright to feel good.
Integrating all those selves, we carry the child, the leader, the dreamer, the worker, the witness. They're all you.
Exactly. You were never actually broken. You
Yeah.
were just waiting to remember.
Mhm.
Maybe today's the day you do. Not just think about it, but really be it.
Thank you for going there with us. If this exploration, this dive resonated, maybe share it with someone else who might be feeling a bit
To,
fragmented.
yeah, pass on the feeling of remembrance. Thanks for tuning into Vibrations and Manifestations.
Until next time, be well.